So in order to set a variable, we're going to run Firebase functions config set some service key is equal to this.api key. But before we do that, let's see what we have in our current environment configuration. And so the way to do that is to do Firebase functions config get. So if we run this, what we're going to see is that currently, well, first of all, we have to copy paste it, correct? Well, we're going to see we have an empty object. And so now if we do Firebase functions config set some service.key, and we set it to some key, what's going to happen is now when we run our get command, we're going to see that our local cache is storing some service.key, and the next time we deploy, these keys will be pushed up. Now, I don't want some service.key, so I can do something called unset. I can do unset some service, and this will remove this from my Firebase configuration. So that removes it. And if we do the get now, we're back to an empty object. Okay, so what do I want us to do? Well, I want us to do the set command, but I want us to do it in a very specific way. I want us to set google.key, and I want you to set that equal to your API key. So in between these brackets, I want you to fill in your API key, not specifically what I'm typing right here. I want you to go copy paste your API key from the credentials, and I want you to paste that between here. Then I want you to run that, and then we'll be able to see it once you do a get. So if I said something like something here, and then we went and did Firebase functions.get, I want you to be able to see, instead of something, I want you to see the API key that you have right here between these brackets or this string. All right, so I'm gonna go do that real quick. All right, so I set mine to store my API key. I hope you did the same. And now the question becomes, well, how do we utilize it now? How do we utilize it in our code? And that's a good question. The way that we're going to do that is we're going to import something called const functions. And so we're going to import that directly into here. And we're going to utilize functions.config.someservice.id. But instead of calling someservice.id, what we're going to call is google.key. And now, if we go over to our meals to go and we say mock false, oh, cannot read property key of undefined by geocode request. Interesting. Well, if we did our config get, we saw our configuration available locally, right? We saw it in the Firebase functions config get. So why isn't it available to us? Well, the reason for that is right now it's only stored in memory as part of the availability to push it up to Firebase. It is not currently available to our functions project for the purposes of locally using it. So in order to do that, we're going to have to do something special. What we're going to do is we're going to open up our command line again, our terminal, but we're going to go cd into the functions folder. And now what we're going to do is we're going to do the same Firebase functions get command, but we're going to use the greater than sign, and we're going to say .runtimeconfig.json. And so this is going to be the file. So we're going to take our configuration, we're going to put it in runtimeconfig.json. And once we do that, we'll have created a file, runtimeconfig.json. You'll see it over here. It'll be available. And we're going to add that to our git ignore, a very important step. We need to add .runtimeconfig.json to our git ignore. And so now it won't be pushed up when we push up our changes, but this contains the configuration that we can see with Firebase functions get. Now, if we go back into our terminal and we go to the terminal 2, and we quickly restart, because you have to restart. Now it has to load in the runtimeconfig.json. When we do this, what it's going to do now is it's going to read this file and it's going to populate the functions config with that runtime config. And if we go over to meals to go 5001, what we can see now is, wow, we're getting data back directly from Google Maps. And so now I know this because, well, Chicago was something we had available, but let's fill in something we didn't have available. Let's fill in Montreal. And when we do Montreal, now we're getting Montreal's information geocoded to us. And the way that I can prove that we're actually using the actual API is if we go to our API overview here, we can see that in the last 6 hours rather, we just hit some usage. Now it may take some time to update actually. It may not have immediately updated it right here, but in a couple of minutes you will be able to see your usage here. The most interesting part is that we're actually utilizing and getting back information from the Geocode API. So let's go take a look at our app, because that should be able to do that now, right? If we fill in Chicago right here, should we get back our information? Well, let's try it out, Chicago. And if we do Chicago, well, that currently is not working. So let's go take a look. If we go take a look at location service, and we take this host JSON that we get back, and we say console.log result, what we'll see is that we are getting back the location information directly from Chicago. And the same is true for Portugal. If we did Portugal, what we're going to see is that we're getting back the location information for Portugal. But why aren't we getting back our restaurants on the cities that we already set up, Mo? Well, the location information may differ. And so the mock information isn't matching up to the longitude, latitude that is being sent back by Google. And so what we need to do now is we need to integrate the actual places search, because the mock data only worked against the mock locations, not the live locations that we're getting back from Google results. And that's what I meant when I said the mock information is just the mock information. It does not work between live API and non-live API. Just to prove, that we're running live on the live API, we can do New York. And by filling in New York, we now know the location, longitude, latitude of New York. It's right over here, the northeast-southwest boundary and the longitude, latitude. Okay, so we've proven that our geocode implementation works. It just worked out of the box. It's just working because we're not currently running our location service right here against mock. Now, the way that I can prove that is if we said over here and mock is equal to true, well now, if we reload our app, what we're going to see is that when we fill in San Francisco, it works. When we fill in Chicago, it's going to work. When we fill in Toronto, it's going to work. When we fill in New York, it's going to break. And that is because it is not receiving any information currently because it's running in mock mode. All right, so we've proven that our app works live. Awesome. So the next part is, how do we implement the Places API? Well, let's take a look at that.